Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. In general, whatever works for you to hear the show, see it, interact with it if you so choose, or just be along for the ride, that is the right place for you to be as we continue our mission to have live local talk radio here in the borderland and delve into the official or instances, and a lot of other things that affect us right here in the borderland, because no one else is going to talk about those things the way that, well, we do, those that live here and deal with those issues. So a lot of them piling up today, no pun at least immediately intended. Basically, if you're going anywhere east of here, good luck, Godspeed, and, well, maybe don't speed, as there has been numerous pileups both within our broadcast area and beyond it. Well, probably still technically within it, but like a couple just immediately nearby, just east of Van Horn, also near the Midland and Odessa area. And we're talking like huge, like 12-car pileups, at least another dozen or so a little bit further east than that. Basically anywhere east of here may be entirely encased in ice. And if that sounds slightly hyperbolic, it's closer than you might think, as we have Robbie Flores joining us over on the social media. So this isn't, of course, just hey, it sucks to be over there. This is, of course, causing tens of thousands of flights to be delayed and or canceled as we see that whole Arctic storm coming down. We also have Amber Banda, rock on to you as well over on the social media. Multiple injuries reported from our news partners there at KFOX 14, reported after 12-vehicle pileup on I-10 east at Van Horn near that I-10, I-20 split, so fun times out that way. But of course, the thousands of flights also being delayed. Now, there is not all doom and gloom on the roadways, as when we talked about yesterday with, let's call it Wile E. Coyote situations being cleared. Actually, get into that a bit. Some updates on, gun shooting charges coming in New Mexico, and that'll kind of lead us into a further discussion about, gun laws on either side of the state line and what's being considered nationally, as we'll be visiting with a previous guest on the show, Vicente Daniel, owner of First Strike Concealed Industries and concealed handgun trainer himself, on what is in place in Texas and what is under consideration as has been brought up recently. So getting into that, Austin Redfern also chiming in with us. Let's chew the fat and discuss possible solutions to local issues. Absolutely happy to do that, as well as Flaco Jimenez, often on the roads, I know, but saying work got canceled today because of the road conditions not looking too good for tomorrow either. So we managed to be this. I was out in shirt sleeves earlier today, short sleeves, even that for that matter. So I'll still call it pretty good around here, but it's weird. If you look at the map, we are just it's almost carved out. Like us in Big Bend kind of are about the only bits left of Texas that are not, again, at least partially encased in ice, more or less at this point here. So I kind of already told many of the major details, but seriously, if you haven't already, some of the videos, pictures circulating around social media of how bad some of these road conditions are, again, almost immediately east of us. They're still diverting traffic as of this afternoon near I-10 and the, again, I-20 split out there. And again, there's a 12-vehicle pileup there, and gnarly too, truck sideways, not a good look and good situation to be in. Similar videos that I was seeing coming out of the Midland and Odessa area. So even if you're trying to go to the I-20 split, not going to work out for you, because, and there are trucks still plowing into each other, as some of the videos I was seeing. So hairy conditions on the road, but even then, even if you weren't looking to drive anywhere, which I would absolutely recommend you don't, there are canceled flights galore, at least as of earlier today. 900, about nearly 1,000 flights delayed or canceled, 980 flights and delays to just about under 1,000 more. And that's just as of earlier today. So bad conditions all around. But another reason I'm very happy to be out here, I mean, the governor has deployed like winter weather task forces. They are asking local utilities to report any outages. The amount of articles I've seen being posted online about how to know the difference between a local outage and a rolling blackout, just not fun, not a cozy situation for anyone involved. So just another one of those reasons I'm incredibly happy to be where we are out here, but we're still seeing some of that colder weather, so stay safe out there. At least one other thing I want to mention before moving on from that is that it's not all doom and gloom on the roads. That situation we were talking about, the Highway 82 into New Mexico, yeah, a slight update there. Of course, those pictures that we had for you yesterday of the Wile E. Coyote-like situation on the road leading up to Cloudcroft here, and again, just for reference, this shot technically a little bit farther away, but that little blue speck on top of that slab of rock entirely across the road, yeah, that's a dude climbing on it, and yet somehow it's actually been reopened now. The Cloudcroft Fire Department sharing some videos from actually even a little bit later yesterday after we were off air of someone actually driving through the area. It has now been reopened there are some extensive road repairs, but how they did that fast, that is some kind of like Acme repair work, I gotta say. So it has since been cleared. Not sure if they had to use explosives or not, but yeah, the road definitely got messed up and they had to do some repaving. So apparently it's a little bumpy in that area, but otherwise passable. Unlike, again, a lot of the other roads that we're seeing anywhere to the east of us. But before we move on and get into our next segment and the interviews there, a couple of shooting related trials or charges going forward with today eventually will lead to trials, certainly, including that incredibly strange situation. Thankfully, no one got hurt from it, of the failed Republican state legislative candidate Solomon Pena has now been indicted on 14 criminal charges by a Bernalillo County jury, according to a release from the district attorney's office as of late yesterday there. So he's facing, just arch stupidity, I gotta say there. Robbie Flores saying he used to live in Cloudcroft, so that kind of hits home. That's very scary. Yeah, no one hurt in that incident, thankfully, with those boulders and just slabs of rock on the road. But of course, what has also been making news headlines, including at the top of our hour right now, is the charges now formally filed against Alec Baldwin in the Russet shooting. And that at least is the reason we're particularly mentioning that today, besides the action happening, is that is at least one, really both of these has been cited as inciting things for those number of bits of legislation that we have been talking about coming up on our airwaves and that we will be further discussing with our guest for this hour. Again, Vicente Daniel, owner of First Strike Concealed Industries, both a concealed handgun instructor and licensed instructor, a FFL holder and firearms manufacturer, so with a lot of perspective on the industry and regulations that come along with this. But there was one question that I remember having come up, I can't remember who asked it, about why there are two charges against Alec Baldwin and even the other person, the set manager, I do believe, supervised weapons on set, has also been charged. It's because that's the choice that the jury in these cases is going to have to decide, is which version of the manslaughter charge is he going to face. But as much as that will probably be developing and making headlines in its own way, there is also the fact of what laws are now being talked about in New Mexico. This contributes to it. The other one we talked about as well, at least again, has been cited as one of the inciting reasons, that Solomon Pena situation. So let's delve into it. Both get the overview that has been requested by y'all actually on what are some of the laws, what are some of the specifications that are in place here in Texas, and what are the things you need to know, even as we do have that, constitutional, permitless, however you want to refer to it, kind of carry. What actually comes with it, as well as response to these other laws, other situations that have been occurring here in the borderland. So let's go ahead and jump and take that next break right now. You are, of course, tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Like I said, coming out of this, we'll delve more into some of those other related subjects as you all been requesting. So in any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Multi-vehicle crash on Dyer between Ford Boulevard and Cassidy is slowing traffic at McKinley Avenue. Slow traffic Montana Avenue eastbound from McRae out to Zaragoza, 10-minute delays. Mesa northbound slow from the downtown exits to North Desert with a 5-minute delay. Stop and go in Global Reach southbound between the Expressway and Montana Avenue, 17-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Winning $1,000 incites all kinds of emotions.
Are you kidding? No way.
What to do with it is up to you.
We're going to Key West. That's it. What are you, nuts? We're going to Atlantic City.
Listen for your chance to win $1,000 with inflation compensation.
Listen for your chance to win $1,000 every hour from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Enter the nationwide keyword at ktsmradio.com for your chance to win. Brought to you by Sunland Park, Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, where buying a car is fun.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. Hiring can be a headache. That's why there's Indeed, the hiring platform that removes the hassle. Sponsor a job and immediately get a short list of quality candidates. And you can schedule and conduct video interviews right on their site. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
Play Cash Blitz scratch tickets today. You could win top prizes from $5,000 to $1 million. And have you heard about the $10 million Cash Blitz challenge? It's your second chance to win big. Just enter non-winning tickets at TexasLottery.com. You could win a VIP trip to an iHeartRadio event or concert, or a shot to play the $10 million Cash Blitz challenge in Austin. Play today and enter to win at TexasLottery.com. That's TexasLottery.com.
Why do you buckle up when you get in your truck? Maybe you do it to get home safely to your loved ones, or because you take your job as a professional driver seriously, or because you want to follow the law to stay safe. Remember, it doesn't matter how long you've been driving, or even if it's a quick trip. Wear your seatbelt to stay safe on the road. Learn more at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. That's www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. And remember to buckle up when you get behind the wheel. Paid for by FMCSA.
Hey, Texas! This time of year is all about coming together and enjoying time-honored holiday traditions or starting your own. This winter, make sure your fellow Texans, especially those with a serious mental health condition, know how to stay informed and protected from increased COVID-19 risks associated with serious mental illness. Getting vaccinated is pro-Texan protection against COVID-19. Visit www.vaccines.gov/search to find a vaccine provider near you.
It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity during tax season because so much sensitive info is all together.
Before we start the annual meeting of Sean's personal info, has anyone seen Social Security number?
Not me.
Nope. Nuh-uh. Oh no, he's been stolen.
LifeLock by Norton makes it easy to help protect yourself. If you become a victim, we'll work to fix it. No one can monitor all transactions, but you can save up to 25% off your first year with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Identity theft protection starts here.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back to Talk El Paso, airing on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, more or less the main one. It's where most of the comments come in, and the Thunderdome of comments often ends up being formed, so forewarned, forearmed if you want to wade in over there. But we also will pop some of those more relevant or interesting ones up on screen for you, even during this interview, as we do have joining us here in studio right now. We are joined by Vicente Daniel, owner of First Strike Concealed Industries. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely happy to have you on. First time in studio, actually. We were just talking about it. So we've had you on the show previously, remotely, to talk about various issues, concepts, pretty much I want to say like a couple of times at least over the last several years, as there has been, even just within Texas, a lot of changes whenever it comes to the basic laws, concepts, and kind of legal foundations for guns and firearms and possession of them here in Texas. We've seen a lot of changes over our time speaking about these things.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's been a lot of changes where there's been reform, amendments, new facts to look at. But yeah, across the past couple of years, I've been here, I want to say twice. So looking forward to today's segment.
Absolutely, because I mean, some of the things that have happened, of course, I mean, one of the first times we were talking about was the change in open carry, because it was at that point in time, also just going to generally refer to as pre-pandemic, open carry of a handgun was not legal in Texas. That got changed. And then more recent session, we saw the changes of the open or the constitutional / permitless carry. And that is one that we've even had some people in the audience still kind of wondering about. So when it comes to that, you, besides being, of course, with First Strike Concealed Industries, is that you are also a LTC instructor, licensed to carry instructor, which does still exist in Texas. And I have certain recommendations that come out. I'm a holder myself, so, and actually got my license through your class. So it's an important thing to know that there are still, as much as the idea of constitutional and a lot more permissiveness, there are still very important regulations and requirements that come along with this even.
Absolutely. You did yours something quite a few years back. I've been doing this for about a little more than a decade.
Yep.
And when it comes to things like open carry going into effect back in about 2016, I think is when it was, that was a big thing that come into play where people were looking for it, they wanted it, and then it went to constitutional a couple of years later from there. And many really appreciate it. But even that being said, you don't see it as much as you would expect to.
That's true. I think I can count the number of times I've seen non-law enforcement officer related open carry probably on, one or two hands.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't have necessarily always noted it, but the couple of times it's been noticeable to me, like in a store, on the street, out and about, has been not that much, I will say.
Same way. I mean, I think the most I've ever seen it, maybe one or two retail stores, and it's usually, single individual, a family kind of just walking around, exercising their right, which is their due so. But
sure.
It's very, very rare I see it common. I don't go to many, many places. I hear about it here and there from customers that are law enforcement where they interact with it.
Oh, sure.
Myself personally, no, I don't really see that often.
So, of course, it's been possible, but again, there are requirements that come along with it. Some of the more noticeable ones, if you know what to look for, would be the 30.6 and 30.7 signs that you might see out in front of it. That is referring to essentially Texas Legal Code 30.06 was the original one when concealed carry was the only way to carry a handgun in Texas, and then added on to that was 30.07, which has certain legal requirements, but essentially if you find those at the entryways to a business or other major building, there are requirements that come along with it that you essentially are then, if they're presented properly, legally required to comply with.
Absolutely. You have to hold to those because those laws have been in place for a very long time. The 30.6 you're referring to, it just says if you're going to enter the premise, you cannot be concealing. So you couldn't carry that at all. So in most cases, they would just open carry because that 30.6 just defines you cannot conceal it. So you can't conceal it, open it. So when they introduce the 30.7, which is the opposite of it, the partner to that saying you can't open carry it, well, there's no 30.6, and they would just cover it up and conceal it. So you can do both or either or, but when both are posted, then you can't do either or. Now, for most places, the stipulation requires to be at the primary entrance, eye level,
right,
1-inch lettering, contrasting colors.
Absolutely.
But a lot of businesses would put it on see-through, postings or on the very, very bottom towards the floor. So if you're not looking down there, you don't see it. A lot of businesses have gotten better on that, and I'm starting to see more and more holding both the 07 and 06 in compliance to the front door locations where they're adhering to it. That is starting to come up more of what I'm noticing.
I will say that I think, just completely anecdotally, I feel like I see the 30.7 more often. If there is one noted at all, that tends to be the one that is there, but there are a number of places that do have them both there, and like you're saying, but there's also, there's both the letter of the law and then not being a jerk, because a business may be under the mistaken idea that just having the, say, gun with the X over it sign is enough, where technically that does not carry force of law in Texas at the very least. But there's also like verbal information, and frankly, what I keep coming back to, and why even if anyone's saying like, okay, yeah, I can carry, I can do whatever I want, make sure you know the law. And that's where the training comes in for me, because if anything, if you are choosing to go about armed, you have even more of a burden put on you, because you have to know, it's not a license to do anything, even if you are licensed, because you have to know the law, know the requirements that come along with it. And that comes with, at the very least, study, but ideally training as well.
A big factor is etiquette, like you're referring to here. And one thing to be very aware of is that when you're going to an establishment, if nothing is posted, or even if you're just seeing that gun with a line through it, where it says, no, you have somebody be comical. Well, good thing I don't carry that brand of gun.
Like, I don't have a Glock. I don't have that revolver.
Exactly. You see it often, and it gets come to it often. But keep in mind is that these establishments are private property, and being private property, they can enforce their own liabilities or regulations or stipulation to enter that facility or that business. So even if there's nothing posted, if they were to approach you and say, "Hey, we don't want you to be here," in truth, the person can say, "No, I'm not breaking the law. You can't force me to leave." But at that point, they're asking to leave, so you need to abide by their establishment. And if you don't leave, then they can call the police, and then the police will show up, and then at that point, you're trespassing.
Right.
And then if you're, being that person that's being difficult, it's more than likely not going to go in your ideal way.
Exactly. Like I said, it kind of generally don't be a jerk in life, but also even with this, as serious as it is, it's even more important to know that. Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now here in studio with us is Vicente Daniel, owner of First Strike Concealed Industries, owner of the thing, manufacturer, and also FFL holder and LTC instructor. If people want to find out more about what you all do and what business that you all conduct, what's the best place for them to find y'all?
They can go through social media. We do have a website go on fscic.co or through direct contact my phone number.
All right, absolutely. Here, we'll give that in a minute here. So the requirements that also come along with the way that, again, constitutional carry is in Texas. Hey, let's talk a little bit about the baselines on it here, because, I mean, sure, it means that if you are able to possess a handgun or firearm in Texas, you can carry it. But, there's also requirements that come along with that. I mean, usually from the ability to possess the firearm. So it's not anyone can have it. There are still base level requirements, mostly based on adjudication.
So if somebody has an arrest history in their background where they had that adjudication instead of being conviction, there's still a limitation of statute limitations. If somebody gets an arrest for something like can be possession of controlled substance or for DWI, they're still unable to possess a firearm. Now, once a certain time frame goes past, things like DWI, it's 5 years. For possession, it's, I believe, 10 years. It just varies in factor. The person who gets that kind of arrest will have it on their docket, and it specifically states what their time frame is.
Mm-hmm.
But just because they can open carry, if they're not legally eligible because they have that arrest background, then they need to wait, and then afterwards they can rejoin the society because they've proven themselves, a role model citizen again.
And absolutely, and there's also, of course, the factor that there are certain buildings that are, even without the signage, strictly prohibited. Basically, any place that has law enforcement of any kind, metal detectors, security searches, etc., I would say it's kind of the shorthand of definitely excluded from where constitutional carry, at least in Texas, applies, though there are more technicalities that even go within that.
Well, there's many facets there because in most cases, you see places like even places of worship. And I witnessed that some churches or synagogues or whatever they've decided to worship at, some may say, no, you can't carry, or some will say, yes, you can carry if you're licensed. So they'll put the specific signage, or they'll put the signage that denotes that you can carry here if you're licensed. It just varies, but there are some places for sure that you cannot carry. So, hospitals, courthouses, police stations that are secure. Of course, they're all secure, but the entryway, you have to check it in and
right
and whatnot. Otherwise, schools, of course, as well. Now, keep in mind, the public schools are different compared to places of higher education like universities.
Right.
Those are two different things. Yes, they're both educational, but if, let's say, somebody is a student at Park University or at UTEP, there are a different set of regulations and guidelines for that as opposed to being, junior high, high school, or elementary.
Exactly. And it ends up a lot of the times being that in general, I mean, if you're going to do this, make sure you know the law. But the way I kind of think of it is that in general, buildings on a college campus, yes, unless it's a specific type of facility, such as like a lab or like a childcare facility. But again, there's a lot of technicalities involved in there. So that's kind of my shorthand. But let's just say I haven't had the circumstance where I actually have to apply it. So it's not been one that I've studied that closely.
So that could be a whole number of ways. Keep in mind, at the same time, even though they're still schools, they're still at the same time a business, and they have their own regulations. When that original passed law went through for college universities, they tried making it where you couldn't go through the hallways, and that didn't go through. So they limited to parking lots. Then they went back and forth. At this current point, if you're carrying on campus within parameter of law, then you can still do so as long as it's properly maintained.
And again, look out for the signs and all the kind of things that come with that. But that's overall what I would say that the kind of current state of the law in terms of carrying, possession, again, long arms is different, but substantially similar, I would say, because, well, not really concealing of it, just because of the logistical things that come along with it. But let's just say that that's the kind of current status of law as it exists in Texas within our area, again, at this moment in time.
Yeah. And Texas, of course, very, very pro 2A, which is one of the reasons why I love living in Texas.
Oh, sure.
Puts it to the point where people who want to exercise that right, can definitely do so more here than in other locations that they may not be as fortunate. So, I follow that.
But I will say that even then, even as constitutional carry exists, the license to carry also certainly exists in Texas. And I mean, you're an instructor, you got a vested interest in it here. But as I often talk about, the idea of getting the training, let's just say that, again, the example I use is it's like owning a car and not having a license. Like, sure, I own a car, I'm a driver, but have you actually gone through like the training to go with it? And no, the license in the firearms case is not required to do the basic operation. And yet the basic instruction on both the manipulation, proficiency, and also the legal requirements that come with it. Some of what we've discussed right now, but then also the things of like, explaining concepts such as castle doctrine, or essentially, what rights, responsibilities come along with the possession of a firearm. And one of the phrases that will stay with me forever, that lack of prosecution does not convey civil immunity, is these are all very important concepts that come through, again, this basic level of training.
Yeah. And in my course, when I teach it, which is referring to about there's no immunity from civil liability, it's a big factor. And as you go through the course, there's definitely an advantage to students, because it teaches these things that they may not have already known, because whether someone takes offense to it, common sense isn't that common. But at the same time, aside from having that information, that additional training, the etiquette to understand what you do, where you go, where you can't go, additional benefits and features of that is things like the purchase of a firearm. When you ever licensed to carry, that makes it an instantaneous, process compared to not having one. You have to go through the current background check with the 4473. When you have to fill the background, they run it in, call it in, and do your background. If your license is current and everything matches, then that's your automatic background. So there's advantages to it.
So there are advantages. And again, I could call this training, but like very, very basic level. Like this is your driver's ed, as opposed to not after you get a ticket for a defensive driving, but like an actual, here's some advanced driving courses, which I would also encourage people to do, both in terms of driving and when it comes to firearms. There's a number of other, more advanced training facilities in our area, and increasingly there. So if people have the time and ability to, and are actually interested in exercising and being proficient in exercising this right, I would strongly encourage them to consider.
Yeah. As an instructor myself, when I'm running these classes, a big thing that I look at is we have to, of course, do the written proficiency and then also shooting proficiency. And as I'm there, I can determine whether or not somebody has the capability of properly function or handling a firearm. So if I experience or witness somebody that does not know how to do it properly, then I'll pull them aside. We're not going to pass you right now. We can get some training, whether it's from myself or wherever you want to go to, because I can offer that.
Sure.
And get you being able to do this effectively, because there's no way myself as an instructor, and I know a very large amount of other instructors, will not pass somebody if they're sitting there loading their ammo backwards, or if they don't know how to put the magazine in. And you laugh, but it happened. I have more times than I prefer to.
I've seen it happen, and like the amount of places, local gun stores I've seen where they have the jar of shame up there saying the gun was totally unloaded, and then it's the ammunition that was pulled out of firearms that were brought into the store. That kind of thing. Like you said, common sense isn't that common, so never hurts to have more training, more knowledge, more information, more proficiency with this here. So along with this, there's been at least one example in our local area that I'd want to ask you about, but we'll talk about that coming out of this next break. Right now, again, joining us here right now in studio is Vicente Daniel, owner of First Strike Concealed Industries. Find them over on online and on social media. But taking that next break right now, so coming out of this break, talking more about also what are some of the prospective laws that are being talked about either regionally or nationally. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. A mangled mess on I-10 about 80 miles east of El Paso after winter weather results in a multi-vehicle pileup near Van Horn. Several 18-wheelers were involved in the crash that resulted in several injuries. It happened at 7 o'clock this morning, and at least 12 vehicles were involved. According to authorities, the road had several patches of ice. Severe winter weather is affecting much of Texas, causing hundreds of flight delays and cancellations. A person died after being involved in an ATV crash at Red Sands. According to authorities, it happened on Sunday night at about 7:45. Deputies were dispatched to the 15,000 block of Montana in reference to a two all-terrain vehicle crash. 2 drivers were taken to the hospital. One of them died at the hospital. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
A crash on North Mesa before Festival Drive is slowing traffic. 5-minute delays, Mesa Street northbound from the downtown exits up to North Desert Boulevard. Slow traffic on Montana Avenue eastbound with 15-minute delays from McRae out to Desert Meadows. A crash with injuries, Alameda Avenue at Lafayette. Try South Yarborough as your alternate. El Paso fires on the scene there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery, closely monitoring the weather situation. We'll see increasing clouds in the overnight, about a 40% 20% chance of showers as we go into your Wednesday. A winter weather advisory is in effect for East El Paso County. So if you're traveling east, be careful on those roadways. We'll see highs tomorrow in the lower 50s. For your Thursday, 10% chance of a morning shower with high around 58. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast. So now, former Vice President Mike Pence has been caught mishandling classified documents. Lisa will get to the bottom of it with Mike Davis, founder and president of the Article 3 Project. Listen to The Truth with Lisa Booth on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's face it, credit cards are pretty much a necessity.
New tires for the car? Here's my card.
I order takeout, here's my card. And most of us just accept the high interest rates credit cards charge as a necessary evil.
What are you going to do?
Get a low fixed rate credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream from $5,000 to $100,000 and pay off those credit card balances. Apply online and you could get your money as soon as the day you apply. The average credit card company charges over 19% APR. But with Lightstream, you can get a fixed rate as low as 7.99% APR with autopay and excellent credit.
Now I can pay off my high-interest credit cards and save money with a much lower rate.
Apply today at lightstream.com/radio and get an additional interest rate discount. That's lightstream.com/radio. Lightstream.com/radio.
Subject to credit approval. Rates range from 7.99% APR to 23.99% APR and include a 0.5% autopay discount. Lowest rate requires excellent credit. Terms and conditions apply and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/radio for more information.
Wendy's homestyle French toast sticks are so good. Some are saying they're better than their mom's French toast. Perfectly crispy on the outside, perfectly fluffy on the inside, perfectly perfect in every way. Try Wendy's homestyle French toast sticks today and see if they're better than your mom's. This report is sponsored by Wendy's. Try Wendy's homestyle French toast sticks today.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back to Talk El Paso, airing on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments coming in over there, as we have been during these pre-recorded interviews, popping up the most relevant and or interesting ones to the discussion that we are having. But of course, keep those going. Phone lines here in a bit, opening them up at the end of the segment as we usually do. But again, joining us here in studio right now, we are joined by Vicente Daniel, owner of First Strike Concealed Industries. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely happy to have you on to talk about some of the various realities that we already have in place in Texas. And it's worth noting that in New Mexico, they did still currently do, and before Texas changed to its allowing of open carry of handguns, they had that as a constitutional carry previously. Open carry only, they have still currently do have it that a concealed carry is permitted only, but it's an interesting way. I mean, I've known that for years, ever since going out to like BLM land to shoot at targets in the desert kind of thing, that open carry is permissible there, and some different regulations whenever it comes to how you can carry it in your car, extension of the home, those kind of things. But at the very least, given their discussion about regulations, laws, how they exist in Texas, and etiquette that comes along with them, there was, of course, a notable circumstance that happened within the last year, certainly, but definitely within last year, of an individual who was open carrying a long arm and generated a bit of a law enforcement response and community concern there.
So I'm pretty sure talking about the gentleman walking over by Montana.
Yeah, I believe that was the area, east side for sure.
Yeah, so that gentleman or that individual doing so, I remember reading somewhere that he mentioned he wanted to do it because he was exercising.
Right.
And several bystanders, concerned citizens also approached him. He told them the same thing. He told law enforcement as well. And they left them as it was, and they went on. But others that were still concerned pushed for it to be addressed further than what it was. So I believe at one point he actually got arrested for it. But the point is, when he was doing it, I can see your point that you want to exercise your Second Amendment and your freedom to walk around with the firearm when it's in a proper position on your body. But if you're doing it where you're doing it is a big factor. My understanding is that he walked by some school areas or within school range, and that was the biggest concern for a lot of individuals. I mean, just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. That etiquette thing you want to talk about is we want to be very, very mindful of situation. Not too long ago before that, a couple of years back, we had a pretty big tragedy. So people can still be sore. Some people might say, well, too soon, maybe not too soon, get over it. The thing is that everybody was affected differently. And
that's
one
true.
person may have gotten, in a mentality state where seeing that raised alarm for them.
And which I can't necessarily even blame them for it. But I mean, I feel like there has been a prevalence. I mean, there's been like the CrossFit games that have made the idea of, weighted plate carriers for exercise more common than it necessarily used to be, or the idea of like load-bearing gear in general, not exactly common, but recognizable in its own way. So the idea of doing it both, exercise meant in two ways there, both an exercise of rights and then like physical exercise and getting out and, getting the experience with it. And there are ways to do that. I mean, there's arguments about just do it in your yard. And again, I want to make it perfectly clear, this gentleman, to my understanding, without knowing any of the specific legal implications of his case, was more or less within his rights. Getting within ranges of schools, there would have been more of an issue I could understand here. But again, the way that you do it is, I mean, particularly as a firearm owner and carrier and choosing to do that, you do have to understand that more eyes are on you and more judgments are going to be made. So kind of how you conduct yourself is, well, that it's almost like a knowing is half the battle. How you conduct yourself and the attitude you take to it is kind of setting up most of the way the interactions will happen after that, I kind of feel like.
Yeah. And without or in advance of knowing people may be upset or hear my viewpoint on that, because of course viewpoint is one thing, it's everybody has an opinion. But being very, very mindful how you do that. I mean, you can take somebody that wants to go to a pool, and how they dress can be very, very pool and appropriate there, and that's okay. But you don't take the same kind of outfit and go to somewhere like church. Two totally different scenarios, different situations. Just because you can doesn't mean you really should. Now, was he wrong? 100%? No. He was okay with doing it. He was within law. He was exercising his right. But at the same time, just because, again, you can doesn't mean you should because of circumstances around.
I mean, we've talked about other things. There have been open carry marches that happen in our area.
I participated in many of those myself.
Yeah, and they often are very, promoted, put out there, and very clear what's going on. And also the way it's carried, either a, parade carry, rifle slung over the shoulder, those kind of things are other technicalities that go into it. But speaking of the technicalities and, of course, the laws that are being talked about, there is, of course, as we are recording this, nationally, some conversation going on some kind of regulations, restrictions, potentially return to some form. The way I keep thinking of it is similar to the assault weapons ban of 1994. That seems to be what most of the ideas that are being proposed seem to circulate around. A lot of technicalities, at least several different forms of bills or potential legislation that have been filed as of this Congress. The actual ability of them to move forward is, given the makeup of Congress and the way nationally things are right now, it makes it dubious if it'll actually move forward at this point. But taking that aside, if these were to move forward, I mean, the assault weapons ban of 1994 has a few very interesting provisions, including essentially, as we've mentioned before, focuses on features of rifles as opposed to, say, an actual functioning mechanisms, the actual, fire control groups, for say, of a firearm.
A lot of these things that are going into place, I know what you're talking about, unfortunately are being put into place or being considered by individuals who really don't know what they are or who aren't really familiar with them. You can have somebody that drives a car, but doesn't necessarily mean they know how to work on a car.
Yeah,
It's a mechanic. They're two different things. Yeah, you know what a car does, you know where it can take you, you know what it can do, but you don't know how to operate it or how it really works, the specifics of it. And a lot of these things go into law. I think it was HB 101 was one of the my attention was about the whole what consists of a firearm, where it has a shroud to keep your head from getting burned, or if it has a thumb hole, or if it has the folding stock. And they're trying to define it specifically by what they determine makes a firearm or semi-automatic firearm.
So yeah, a lot of features focus here as opposed to the actual functioning. Again, the functioning mechanism, how it cycles, those kind of things. Yeah, the barrel shrouds, pistol grips, folding stocks, collapsible butt stocks, those kind of things end up being a lot of the list here. One of the things that was the feature of the actual 1994 bill, though, and this is a bit before my time, so I'm going to go back and do some research on it there, was not able to possess any of these kind of weapons at that point in time in my own age because of age. But some of the things that were a very interesting feature of it was kind of a grandfathering clause in that law at that point in time. So weapons that met those definitions or specifications that were possessed before that point still could be, as well as magazines and, ammo feeding devices. And whether or not that comes up in this one has been a point of contention. But what did that mean that time around? Kind of looking back at the historical perspective, that kind of grandfathered clause.
First off, thank you for making me feel old. I appreciate it.
Sorry.
Two, I mean, grandfather clause basically means if you're in possession of that firearm or possession of that item, whatever it is, whether it's a magazine or a firearm of said nature, that you wouldn't be held liable to the new regulation coming into play. So if you own something and you took possession of it and you had it before it went into an act, then you can continue with it. And anyone afterwards would have to be liable by the regulation of to be able to purchase it, whether it was special licensing or registration through an NFA, which is the National Firearms Act, different things like that. But I think right now, on the current legislation going in, there's a significant difference.
Yeah, there is, and I've seen both versions of this moving forward with and without these kind of grandfathering clauses, where essentially the difference would be, okay, there's no new ones coming out versus there's to be none of them, period, going forward. That's kind of the critical difference to get down to the brass tacks of it. So whether or not that actually can proceed forth within this current Congress, I remain dubious about, but that's kind of what's percolating here. And again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Vicente Daniel, owner of First Strike Concealed Industry and also an LTC holder, instructor, and FFL holder and manufacturer. So if you want to find them, again, First Strike Concealed Industry, FSCI, find them over on social media and online. So when it comes to the actual stuff being considered regionally, again, nationally, yeah, I wouldn't even really be one to give that a coin flip, whether it'll proceed or not. I remain very dubious, but as has come up on our airwaves in a couple of ways, there's actually a number of bills that are being considered within the New Mexico legislature, among other things that are, some of the ones that have been mentioned so far. I'm just going to kind of mention the list. There is New Mexico NMHB 9 for House Bill 9. What's the other one here? House Bill 9. Got the lists. 101, 72. What's this one? That one's 72. 100, and then yeah. And so there's a number of them that have been being considered. Oh, and also HB 50, if I didn't mention that one already. So these are all within the New Mexico legislature. And so there's a number of different ones, including just reading out some of them here, like HB 50's title is unlawful. So HB 9 is unlawful access to firearms by a minor. HB 50 or HB 101 here, large capacity magazines and assault weapons. And HB 72, possession of a semi-automatic firearm converter, and a number of other ones. 100 is a 14-day waiting period for firearm sales. And so there's a number of different ones. Oh, and then HB 50 was possession of a large capacity gun magazine. So those are some of the ones, and I'm sure there may be more than that even, that are being considered within the New Mexico legislature at this point. So we mentioned kind of at the start of the segment that there were some different laws and different kind of baseline considerations in place when it came to New Mexico. So this would be looking at a large change if some or any or all of these were to be enacted within the state of New Mexico, and how possession, et cetera, can happen there.
So I don't know if your audience can hear, but I had a huge sigh right there, because just the thinking of these laws going through is just the sigh. So people in New Mexico, I'm sorry for you guys. That sounds horrible. I hate to go through that because I love living in Texas, and that seems like a horrible thing to deal with, because the considerations there are too broad. They're not really fair. And some of the things are useful. I mean, the HB 9 about the accessible to a firearm to a child, that's understandable. I understand that.
Sure.
Keep it out of the kid's range. The person, if they're held liable because the kid injures themselves, kills somebody else, it's a fourth degree felony. But keep it secure. You have a safe in your house, keep it secure. And of course, if it's accessed illegally, they broke into the house, and then it happens that way, you're not held liable. So that something like that, that's within parameter to a certain extent. I understand. That's okay. Of course, parents teaching your kids the right and wrong and safety and what you can or cannot do is a big factor. But other bills, like, for example, the magazine ban or the automatic weapon ban, they're looking at it in the form of a really broad scope. You have things like automatic sears that convert a pistol like a Glock to make it automatic. But then you have something like, let's say, a binary trigger.
Right.
When you pull the trigger, it releases a round, you release it, it releases another round. But because it's two different motions that do it per round, that's not considered automatic. Automatic by the NFA regulation stipulation is that it's something that's held down and continuously releases the round. So it seems like they're trying to pick and choose what they want and not really looking at what they're reading to choose from. Something doesn't seem fair. I mean, the ammunition ban, trying to limit it to a 10% or 10 round magazine.
Yeah, like less than, I think it cannot be 10 or more.
Right.
It's the specific language.
And they're saying that, if somebody has it, modified, then you can't go back and forth. You have to keep it. And if you have it, you have to sell it. And if you don't want to sell it, then you have to get rid of it, send it out of state, or take it to, law enforcement to actually have them destroy it for you, which I'm sure is really going to happen. But it just seems like they're trying to force ideals from other parts of the country that aren't really something that's normal here. New Mexico's been very, very pro two-way for the most part of its history, and so as long as Texas, because not that it's Wild Wild West, but that's where it kind of came from. It's people that are advocates for firearms.
Yeah, and so I mean, some of these things, I mean, reasonable or not, those are just the ones that have been brought up by our audience, among other things. And yeah, like HB 101, which you kind of referred to earlier as being those particularly assault weapons and large capacity magazine bans. I mean, the ways that these are being put forth, I feel like there are versions of what we have seen nationally, among other things, and essentially being brought down. And I guess not in like omnibus and all-in-one bills, if you want to look at it that way, but there's more specificity in these bills. But again, they do seem to be particularly like the 14-day waiting period. I mean, there's not stuff that necessarily totally on face value, the concept of it would be something that would be out of bounds or entirely on at least discussable, but the level that it's going to, kind of in your opinion, that it sounds like is going too far.
In a certain aspect, yeah. In the 14-day wait period, when you do an actual background check through a 4473, you have to have a 7-day if there's a delay.
Right.
Generally, they're pretty quick on finding delays. I've had some process where I'm doing a background check where they'll say, hey, delay 7-day wait, we'll let the customer know, and you go from there. And as the customer is pulling out of the parking lot of the driveway, I'm getting the phone call from ATF saying, hey, they've been approved. Sometimes it happens immediately. Sometimes it goes the full 7 days. Sometimes it goes more. But 14-day on top of the already in place NFA is different. Now, there's different parts where they're adding on, like for family members, there's exclusions. If it's a family member to family member, it's excluded. If it's law enforcement agencies, things like that. But adding on a wait period on top of an already existing wait period, on top of the background check that's already in place, I think that's kind of redundant.
So again, there's a lot of possibilities. I would say that there's probably more possibilities of these being considered or moving forward than there would be in the national legislature. And like I've said, I've gone shooting in New Mexico. I've gone to a competition or two in New Mexico, and there are some provisions, particularly with say the magazine capacity bills about transporting for a competition. Though I have to imagine that there's probably not going to be within that kind of a community a lot of piloting of that concept, even if there were to be events happening there.
Well, there are events in New Mexico that happen pretty often, and whether it's shooting competition for long range, I know there's a pretty strong community in the area for that. But for competition where it's larger capacity, they still happen, not as much, but they still happen. And I know what you're talking about, the 30 round, where they can have that for somebody coming from out of state coming in the state, they can accept that, and also applies towards New Mexico. But if you read it, at least how I was perceiving it, that exclusion specifically states for somebody traveling from out of town.
Right.
It doesn't, or out of state. It doesn't state somebody that's in state and wants to go to there as well. So how do you have somebody that lives in the state that owns that 30 round capacity that's illegal because they want to go there, but the only exclusion as it reads is for somebody traveling from outside of state? And that kind of like contradicts itself in my opinion.
Yeah. So again, we'll have to keep our eye on those particular laws, and again, what's going on states in New Mexico and nationally as well. But I mean, in the meantime, I guess the important thing that I just kind of want to keep reinforcing to people is that they're interested in all of these. They should definitely review the law, know it, be familiar with it, and again, just get training, because there's a whole lot of good instructors yourself and other courses, training facilities in the area that you can get beyond just I know how to operate and become proficient with it. Because if you're interested and all want to know, hell, even people who are opposed to this, you should know how it works, because if you're then like writing the laws about it and you have no idea how these things work, that's we end up with things that are focused on, well, what looks scarier on a firearm as opposed to what actually affects its functioning.
Thank you. Thank you for the compliment as well. No, but you're very, very right. Now, I'm not going against that the LTC is enough training, because it's good start.
It's a start.
But push further. Take courses. There are courses locally from other instructors, myself, or even out of state, whether it's New Mexico or Arizona, that you can go to. And there's several day classes. You can sit there and learn to properly hold your firearm, how to shoot it, how to engage with it, how to maintain it, how to break it down if there's a malfunction. So knowing that's a very, very big help, because in the event that you come to that you have to use it, God forbid, what's going to happen if there's a malfunction? What's going to happen if you don't know how to handle it, if you drop it, if your hand gets stuck where it shouldn't be getting stuck when it's pulling out from where you're being drawn? Practice repetition is a big, big factor. You can have a gun, but if you're not effective at pulling it out and deploying it, then how effective is it to have it?
And even then, even beyond the idea of the simple manipulation of it, also the considerations, the mentality and goes into of when to shoot and when not to shoot, among other things. Those are all big, big considerations that take training to get ingrained.
So if you're going to invest, and this is personal opinion I tell to all my customers as well, if you're going to invest into the firearm, don't expect the invest to stop right there. The investment needs to go further, whether it's additional training, of course, the ammunition for the training, proper holsters for it, safe, securing it. All those things are huge. It's an investment. It's like a child. I hate to use the exact analogy, but it's not just one and done. It's going to be for a while, and you're going to continuing to invest in it a little bit down the road, whether you're upgrading it or paying for licensing for whatever it needs to have, if it comes down to it, or even getting insurance, because I believe there's even insurance for firearm holders.
Yep, those are a number of programs out there like that, and investing into yourself along with it here. So again, joining us here in studio right now has been Vicente Daniel, owner of First Strike Concealed Industries. Again, what's the best place for them to find you if they want to find out more about what it is you do and your background?
Through social media, it's by searching First Strike Concealed Industries, or if you go through direct contact of 915-238-8147, email, or fsci.co.
All right, one more time, that phone number and email.
915-238-8147, and for email, just Vicente, Vicente.Daniel, Daniel @fsci.co.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming to speak with us about some of the laws, some of the features, responses to them here, what's in place, what might be in place, and all the factors in between here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's always nice to talk with somebody who's not one-way directional. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And so let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we will also go ahead and open up those phone lines as we usually do at this point during the program. So that number to call again, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Northbound Joe Battle at Vista del Sol. A stalled vehicle stopped to the right lane, stay to the left to get by. So on the spur eastbound from the Gateway to the Loop, it's a 5-minute delay. Montana Avenue eastbound from McRae out to Zaragoza, 17-minute delay. Global Reach slow as usual with about a half-hour delay from the spur down to Montana Avenue. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle. My company is Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 to provide custom blinds, shades, and shutters at affordable prices. Our blinds are easy to install and shipping is free. Don't hire an expensive professional. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
Big tech is a real danger. Google, Facebook, and Twitter are supposed to be neutral. But now a new book by Congressman Ken Buck blows the lid off their censorship. It's called Crushed, Big Tech's War on Free Speech. In Crushed, Congressman Buck shows how big tech suppressed the truth about Hunter's laptop, COVID, President Trump, and a lot more. Crush says Google uses its monopoly to hurt consumers and silence conservatives. Big tech controls the information flow, but they ignore your right to free speech. If you're tired of their bias, fight back. Get Ken Buck's Crushed. It's already a #1 Amazon bestseller. You'll find out how Google uses its search, ad networks, Gmail, Android phones, and even its YouTube TV to censor conservatives. It's a shocking story. Get Ken Buck's Crushed today in bookstores everywhere, or see the free offer from Newsmax. Go online to crush911.com. That's crush911.com and save almost $30.
The podcast Murder in Miami traces the connection between the killing of a private investigator and an international money laundering scheme. It's a shocking, surreal story of spies, smugglers, and corruption in the city that was the nation's cocaine and murder capital in the 1980s.
Did he tell you who he was running the guns for?
Well, it was obvious. The CIA was running that show.
Listen to Murder in Miami on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
This year is the year to learn a new language with Rosetta Stone. No matter what's inspiring you to learn a language, travel, work, family, or just for fun, the Rosetta Stone app makes it easy to get started and stay motivated to reach your goals. Right now, get a lifetime unlimited subscription with forever access to all 25 of Rosetta Stone's languages for 40% off. Visit rosettastone.com today and save 40%. Rosetta Stone, how language is learned.
Hey Texas, did you know that individuals living with serious mental illness are more susceptible to severe COVID-19? Visit covidvaccine.texas.gov for vaccination resources to help reduce the risk and keep yourself and your fellow Texans informed and protected this holiday season. Stay healthy, Texas.
Stay informed at ktsmradio.com. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Airports in two of Texas's major cities are dealing with a huge fallout from a winter storm that's battering parts of the Lone Star State. At least 40% of the flights originating from or going to both of Dallas's airports and the airport in Austin have been canceled today. Lawmakers are pressing the Department of Justice for access to information on the classified documents found at the residences of both President Biden and former President Trump.
I hope the administration will come up with a better answer than no.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said requests made by the Senate Intelligence Committee are entirely reasonable. The DOJ says it's working to provide the information without harming the ongoing special counsel investigations. Hilaria Baldwin is posting support for her husband, Alec Baldwin, prior to the actor being formally charged with involuntary manslaughter in the deadly 2021 shooting on Rust's movie set in New Mexico. Baldwin's wife wrote, "Alec, we love you and we are here for you" on Instagram. Embattled New York Congressman George Santos says he won't step down as investigations into his personal and campaign finances play out.
A new poll from Newsday Siena College revealed 78% of Santos's constituents want him to resign. Critics again gathered outside Santos' office, with some saying this is the beginning of the end, as he recused himself from sitting on 2 committees. Meantime, late Tuesday afternoon, when Santos was asked about pending investigations, he said, "I'm confident I'll be cleared. I have nothing to hide." I'm Lisa Taylor.
States relying on the Colorado River are past their January 31st federal deadline to reach a deal on cutting water use. Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming instead submitted a proposal after negotiations stalled that detailed ways to reduce water use. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Arizona's Secretary of State is requesting an investigation into Republican Kari Lake for potentially violating state law. The request from Democrat Adrian Fontes comes after the former candidate for governor tweeted a photo of more than a dozen voter signatures, while also claiming tens of thousands of those ballots didn't match signatures on record. Fontes has asked Democratic Attorney General Chris Mays to look into the post and take appropriate enforcement action if necessary. Drug companies often roll out price increases in January for existing drugs, but the amount of the price hikes vary from year to year. Aaron Real reports this year has seen some of the steepest price hikes since 2011.
Manufacturer AbbVie will raise the price of its blockbuster anti-inflammatory drug Humira by 8%. It's the world's top-selling drug and generated more than $20 billion in sales last year, but a generic version is set to launch later this year. Other top-selling drugs that will see price increases: Eliquis, a blood thinner from Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer, will rise 6%. Imbruvica, a cancer drug, is up 6.2%, and Stelara, used to treat plaque psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, and Crohn's disease, is up 4%. About 3 in 10 people don't take a drug as prescribed over the concerns about the cost. Others skipped doses or sought cheaper over-the-counter medications.
This year's Super Bowl features the Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs, but the state of Texas is playing a huge role as well. Both starting quarterbacks played their high school ball in the Lone Star State.
I don't believe it's ever happened in Super Bowl history to have 2 Texas high school football products squaring off at one another at the most important position.
Greg Tepper is the managing editor of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. He says neither Patrick Mahomes nor Jalen Hurts played at one of the state's high school powerhouses. They both went to small East Texas schools, showing how deep the sport has become in Texas. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Bonus. That's bonus. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle, and my company is Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 to provide custom blinds, shades, and shutters at affordable prices. Our blinds are easy to install and shipping is free. Don't hire an expensive professional. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
Welcome to the CPAP Games live from the Hayes bedroom. It's another eventful night, Bruce.
It sure is, Ron. Steve has been struggling with his CPAP.
His wife, Michelle, is trying to contain her rage.
Michelle throws an elbow.
She's leaving for the couch.
Steve should get Inspire.
Absolutely, Bruce. Inspire is a sleep apnea treatment that gives you comfortable, restful sleep with the click of a remote. There's no mask and no hose. Just sleep.
Learn more at InspireSleep.com.
Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at InspireSleep.com.
First, we decide where we want to go. Then we need to know the best way to get there. Hi, my name's Adam Barada. I'm the owner of Advantage Gold. We're the highest rated precious metals firm in the country. We teach people how to own physical gold and silver. Now, we've won the Best of TrustLink Award 4 years in a row because we educate our clients on how to buy gold and silver the right way. We don't pay celebrity spokespeople millions of dollars. We'd rather pass that value on to you. Call 800-900-8000 and speak with one of our experts. We'll send you a free gold kit along with my latest #1 national best-selling book, The Great Devaluation. Call 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000. Get the best information, the best process, the best service, the best value. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000.
Advantage Gold is not an investment advisor or a tax advisor. Consult with your financial advisor before investing.
Call 800-900-8000.
Jackson Hewitt gets you your biggest tax refund guaranteed, plus a chance to double your refund or win weekly prizes with their Double Your Refund sweepstakes. File your taxes on the double. No purchase necessary. U.S. residents 18 or older who file a 2022 federal tax return. Ends 4/2/23.
And now for today's Roblox winter weather alert. iHeartland on Roblox has been walloped by a winter snowstorm. It is a winter wonderland. You can now ice skate at State Farm Park. In State Farm Neighborhood, you can compete in snowball fights, grab a hot cocoa and cookies, and more. There's also special events from your favorite artists and podcasters all month, along with scavenger hunts, exclusive content, and unique items. So enjoy the festive winter weather at iHeartland on Roblox. Head to iHeartRadio.com/iHeartland today.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Whichever way works best for you, that's the right place as where you should be in order to hear the show, interact with it if you so choose, which is, of course, very possible at this point during the program. We, of course, have the comments that have been coming in over on, again, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Facebook, is the main one is Talk El Paso, but also similar pages, again, other Facebook pages, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either also under Andrew J. Polk. You can find us there. But also have that phone line open now as we get into the second hour of the program. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. A lot of people tuning in, chiming in over on the social media, those dropping those likes and reacts. We do appreciate, including James Radcliffe, Ida Beza Gardner, James Holmes, Rocco Jimenez, Robbie Flores, and Monica Cervantes, among others. And a lot of, let's just say, interesting discussion on some of those things we're talking about, and including, okay, I'm willing to give benefit of the doubt in some cases, but if there's not much doubt being left, like Flaco Jimenez saying that he appreciated the interview, finding it very informative. I'm glad you like it. RJ over on the YouTube saying, particularly in relation to the laws in New Mexico, saying, I know folks in Alamogordo that find these bills insulting to their intelligence. Let's face it, I think they still have classic country on the radio. They're not buying it. I guess that's one way of gauging a community's impact, but the people you've talked with are an interesting, I appreciate the perspective on that. But then also some of the other things, including coming out of the interview, like being said that in Texas, you don't need a background check to buy a gun because of Republicans' lack of respect for the safety of Texans. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, but tell me you've never actually bought a gun without telling me you've never actually bought a gun in Texas or not, because there has never been a transaction from an FFL holder I have had that did not include a filling out of a form or doing, again, as a LTC holder, the background check. So, yeah, I think you went on a little bit later to talk about the fact that there's the gun show or the private sale loophole. I've never even been to a gun show in our area or anywhere near it that has not involved me having to do the background check or fill out a form. So if you're looking for the sketchiest of the sketch and essentially getting pretty close to not too far removed from like a gray or even black market, sure, yeah, that's that whole, criminals don't respect the law kind of argument being made. But otherwise, anyone actually like trying to run a business, yeah, that is heck, to places down the streets or other places across the borderland that I've bought from, absolutely always doing that, even as a LTC holder. So Yeah. Anyway, let's get to those phone lines now, as we do have and more commentary coming on this point here, as we do have calls in the line. Again, that number one more time, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have David in the northeast side of town on the line with us here right now. David, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks again for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, sure thing. What's on your...
What a great show today.
Yeah, appreciate that.
This is the epitome of why I always call. Now, first of all, there's being some laws proposed about making damn near all the country, if not most of it, permitless or constitutional carry. Now, that's probably one of the best things to happen to the nation, because first of all, it's in the name, constitutional carry, because it's in our Constitution. Now, first of all, I say it many times, gun laws don't work. They absolutely do not work. And we're seeing that in states like New York. We see that in California. You got these news stories that are admitting that some of the strictest firearm laws haven't been able to prevent mass shootings. And on top of that, the guest you had on the show, who was a license to carry holder, I'm one too. I actually have two. I have one from Louisiana and I have one from Texas.
Okay.
It's just because, it's like the more license you have, it lets people know that you know what you're talking about when it comes to firearms, even though deep down I really don't believe in the licensing process, because just like what the license to carry holder mentioned, it does not prepare you, or it does not give you full training. It's the first step. And if you ask me, it's nothing more than how do I put this? It's just an add-on in government regulation. Now, this is probably going too far for some people, and I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with me. But I don't believe in gun laws, period. I believe if somebody has a firearm and they're misusing it, or they commit a crime with it, then you deal with it. That's the thing. It's always the theory of, let's say there's a business and they have stairs. If somebody falls down their stairs, are they going to take up the stairs? Are they going to bind themselves, by their own stupidity and say, you know what, I can't trust my customers around stairs? Now, I know a lot of people would say I'm comparing apples to oranges here, but that's kind of the concept that we're getting into. People, individuals make laws about firearms, and they really know nothing about them. I mean, we've been through this whole ordeal about don't even get me started on the stabilizing pistol brace, where people who wrote those laws, they have no idea how that little tool that functions, or even the purpose of it. And on top of that, as I've said before, this is another reason why I differ with a lot of people. It's because I believe in protecting the innocent. Everybody agrees with that. But let's say there's about 10, 20 mass shootings a day all over the country. That is still, constitutionally, that is still not enough to create unconstitutional gun laws. And then those ones that you and the guests were talking about in New Mexico, that's very overreaching. I mean, I don't believe not in one of them, because it's a personal responsibility. I mean, yes, I have a child on the way, and I believe absolutely in protecting them and keeping firearms outside of their reach until they're ready to be properly taught in a very controlled and safe environment. But I don't think that should be legislated. And another thing is the fact that now it's always the police that coincide with the gun issue, because you have these same people, these same individuals that call for bans.
David, are you there?
So at one point, they're saying the police should be disarmed, and then at another point they're saying, we think the police should be the only ones to carry firearms. So there's really no consistency here. But again, I don't like playing party politics. Even like I view myself as a not only as, I mean, everybody claims that they're for common sense, and hence the name,
Mm.
common sense gun control. There's nothing common sense about gun control. Common sense is on you. That's making sure that if you do own a firearm, you make sure you're safe with it. And another thing I want to touch on is I've mentioned at least a few times on this show that I open carry everywhere I'm legally allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, open carrying everywhere where you're legally allowed, that comes with a grave responsibility.
Certainly.
All eyes are on you. Now, that's not to say that everywhere I go, people look at me funny and want to call the police, because first of all, I make myself look very how you look too is it perceived. It's the guest on your show. He had a very good indication about when you go to church, you're going to dress in a swimsuit. I mean, you can dress in your little beach going outfit, but it's just you kind of look out of place. It's the same thing when you're carrying a gun. It's like when I carry a gun, I tend to be a lot more polite and a lot more. Not that carrying a gun should induce those qualities in me, but
No, I
I
get what
find
you're saying.
myself
Mhm.
saying, okay, it's like, for instance, if you go somewhere and somebody's let's say somebody's business, and you got a chair that you sit in, and you forget to push it back in. Later on they might be saying, oh, that guy forgot to, he's rude. He forgot to push in a chair, and he was carrying a gun too. So that's the thing. A lot of times when you do something out of the ordinary and you're carrying a gun, it kind of intensifies it, even though the gun shouldn't come into play.
Mm-hmm.
But to tie this all off, because I'm kind of I'm glad I was able to get this call in, because with my job in the military, I'm always on the go, and
Absolutely.
right now I'm traveling in my car safely, but I have my earphones on, so I'm not really breaking the law. We're just having a nice conversation about common sense.
Glad to hear that.
What I want to close on is that I really think it should be absolutely normal to see people going around carrying a gun safely. And another thing is, I don't. If it was up to me, I wouldn't even have no gun zones, because first of all, if everybody has a gun and they're good people, and especially if you have enough police around, you're going to be able to take care of and deal with the situation effectively. And on top of that, I'm not going to flat out say society has to go through a big change, but the mindset has to change, because there's too many bad people carrying a gun. But I guarantee you, writing all sorts of numerous draconian laws and having people who know nothing about firearms or know nothing about the law to dictate our terms, that's not going to work either. There's ways around this, and having people say having people in California and in New York and other unconstitutional states when it comes to firearms. I mean, just ask, don't work. They're very high crime areas, and there's going to have to be another way. And I have faith in humanity enough to know that we'll figure it out.
Well, I certainly hope that we can. A couple ideas come to mind here, but we're going to end up needing to take that break now. So thank you very much for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew.
I'll say that a couple of, just briefly before we end up taking that next break, a couple of concepts I want to put out there that I'll follow up on is the idea of that when in doubt, err on the side of liberty and give people the ability to make a good decision as opposed to making it for them. But then also shopping cart theory comes to mind about the responsibility and responsiveness of people to do what is right, even if there's no benefit and no one watching here, but I'll expound more upon those in this next segment. You are, of course, tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Talking more about this, taking more of your calls. Again, that number, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On Joe Battle Boulevard, northbound at Vista del Sol, a disabled vehicle's blocking the right shoulder. An accident Mesa Street north of Schuster at Rim Road. And an earlier multi-car crash has closed the I-10 eastbound about 150 miles east of El Paso, east of Van Horn, near the I-10-I-20 split. It's a 15-mile backup. Drivers are being detoured in Van Horn. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Winning $1,000 incites all kinds of emotions.
Are you kidding? No way.
What to do with it is up to you.
We're going to Key West. That's it. What are you, nuts? We're going to Atlantic City.
Listen for your chance to win $1,000 with inflation compensation.
Listen for your chance to win $1,000 every hour from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Enter the nationwide keyword at ktsmradio.com for your chance to win. Brought to you by Sunland Park, Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, where buying a car is fun.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Save on appliances and more at the Truckload event at Lowe's. Get an additional 10% off all in-store clearance appliances and take home what you buy same day. Shop the Truckload event today. Exclusions apply while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowe's.com for details. Valid 1/5 to 2/8.
Why do you buckle up when you get in your truck? Maybe you do it to get home safely to your loved ones, or because you take your job as a professional driver seriously, or because you want to follow the law to stay safe. Remember, it doesn't matter how long you've been driving, or even if it's a quick trip. Wear your seatbelt to stay safe on the road. Learn more at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. That's www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. And remember to buckle up when you get behind the wheel. Paid for by FMCSA.
Hey, Texas, there are approximately 950,000 individuals in Texas living with a serious mental illness, which is an individual risk factor for severe COVID-19. If you or someone you know is living with a serious mental health condition, such as schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, or bipolar disorder, make sure they know where to go this holiday season to stay safe and healthy. Visit covidvaccine.texas.gov to find resources and location information for vaccine providers near you. Stay healthy, Texas.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-989-8906 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-989-8906. That's 800-989-8906. What do you have to lose? Call 800-989-8906. Again, 800-989-8906.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in. However you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk, and particularly at this point during the program, a lot of ways to interact with the show. So we do have those phone lines open, if full up at the moment, but you know what I mean. Take the number down, be handy with it, 915-544-5876. That's 544-KTSM. A lot of stuff that we'll be talking about here, and more comments that we've been addressing, including, just those dropping those likes and reacts, the simplest way to put it here, including Stephen Christopher, Matt Olson, James Ratcliffe, Ida Beza Gardner, James Holmes, Flaco Jimenez, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, and Louis Penato, and a lot of back and forth on that last caller here, including Fred Marquez saying, I completely agree with the caller. We need people like him that understand that guns don't kill, it's criminals who kill. We need more armed law-abiding citizens. I mean, there's another couple of phrases that come to mind, including like armed society is polite society, which I can understand where it's coming from here, but it's people being responsible. So shopping cart theory, it's been coming around again. I've been seeing more about it online, but the general idea is, and I've talked about it on this show previously, so this may be old hat to some, but the concept is that imagine the shopping cart. It is something that we all universally recognize the correct action is to return the cart to the cart corral, if not in the store, if that's convenient. And it's also an action that there is no law requiring you to do, and there is no penalty if you do not. It simply comes down to, well, what are you willing to do when it neither benefits nor negatively impacts you? So I'm not saying I use it as a shorthand judge of like a neighborhood that I'm in. Do they have shopping carts all over the lot because no one's willing to just do the simple act of walking it back? Or if it's cleaned up, it means that there are more virtuous citizens there. But it's kind of a shorthand for, are you really ready for self-governance, for self-rule? Because if someone isn't telling you, you have to, or you're still willing to do it because you know it's right. And again, if no one's watching, again, literally nothing that will happen to you for not returning a shopping cart, except maybe a little bit of a stink eye from maybe me and others. And if it actually society is willing to do that, to take that on, other phrases come to mind about including, society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they shall never rest in, and those kind of concepts, doing something for that has literally no benefit to you, but is the right thing to do, is pretty important. And fostering that is the real devil in the details, I gotta say, because I've been a part and be very, very fortunate to have been part of, say, Youth Leadership Conference here regionally in like Arizona and Texas, here in West Texas anyway. They gave me a lot of hope and faith for the future that these kind of things being inculcated to ours and our forebears is literally one of the purposes of, like, say, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and making sure that continues to be passed on, as opposed to like, sure, someone will do it. Like, again, coming back to personal responsibility, incredibly important here. But let's get back to those phone lines. Again, the number to call there, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have Andrew on the west side with us here right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Andrew, I encourage everybody, politicians and every citizen of this state or resident of this state, to be familiar with gun laws. It's very important.
Absolutely, because, even if it's something that you're not expecting to use in your own life or be impacted by, it could end up impacting you in a variety of ways, decisions that you didn't see coming or certain circumstances. So familiarity with the law is generally a good thing. I'll definitely agree with you there.
Yes, it comes as no surprise to me. Stories that I've heard. Anyway, do you know that there have been establishments that serve the public that refuse to serve police officers? I'll say peace officers, because they're carrying a gun, and these people are willfully ignorant of the law. I say they just don't want to learn.
Yeah, that's where it kind of comes into the idea of lack of education when it comes to firearms, and just kind of allowing knee-jerk reactions is writ large why we're, I think, in some of these situations when it comes to the laws, but also, just ignorance. Ignorance is almost never a good thing. Like, think about it, like, oh, no, being ignorant is definitely best here. I actually had someone try to argue that to me once, that, no, I prefer to be ignorant, and I've never like hit someone out of anger, but that was my knee-jerk reaction to be like, seriously? But in any case, the idea of just saying, now I don't need to know about it, and then holding like strong opinions about it is just, it's not a good way to go through life.
Well, what you do not know can hurt you many times. But there's been instances, let me tell you, of people of establishments that serve the public that they do not want to serve police officers. I believe last one I heard was a incident in East Texas out of Whataburger. Yeah, they did. They didn't want to serve the police officer because he was armed. Well, the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure 2.1305 specifically prohibits that.
If you are, denying, I guess if it was one thing, if it's an investigation, but just denying entry due to a peace officer and performance of his regular duties, such as existing and being armed, yeah, it's not a good look. I'm very much going to say, and I'm going to sure a lot of people had something to say about, particularly if this happened after the acquisition of Whataburger by that, was it the Chicago-based conglomerate?
I believe so, but it doesn't matter if the officer is in the actual performance of his duty, or he's on duty. It doesn't matter. The fines for that are quite stiff.
Yeah, as I would imagine they probably rightly should be, because again, anytime there's just a knee-jerk, no, bad, evil, go away, without knowing like the contents, circumstance, like if someone's acting shady and doing stuff like that, it's kind of what the other part that was the previous caller meant to say is don't be a jerk. Like, yeah, there's one thing, but just on the, again, knee-jerk and no, we don't want this, can't have this, kind of attitude, that's just, it's not good.
That's true. Also, concerning these individuals that want to ban assault weapons, Biden, he continuously saying,
sure,
well, we did it before, we can do it again. Well, there goes remember I've talked in the past about the mushroom system of management.
Oh, yeah, keep you in the dart and put elimination on your head.
Yeah, or feed it to you.
That too.
Well, back in 1994, we did not have Heller.
No, that is true. That is a point that hasn't been brought up that much, but it's a very relevant one. That's Heller versus DC, the one that basically says there can't be outside too much of the actual definition of the Second Amendment, and the whole shall not be infringed part, that there cannot be essentially blanket laws prohibiting possession. I mean, I'm glossing it over and being very simplistic with it, but that's one of my major takeaways from that decision.
Yes, and another point that it made, it is an individual right, contrary to what one of your particular callers constantly proclaims. But and I'll reiterate, it is an individual right. So, like I said, people out there need to get educated. And as for concealed carry, put it this way, or open carry, I don't want people to know that I'm packing.
I mean, sure, and there's a whole debate that has gone on, and I'm sure will perpetually go on, about what is the best way to do it, what's the best way to go about it. But what I think is important to me anyway comes down to is the right to choose what is right for you, the right to have how you're going to conduct your life yourself as a responsibly armed citizen. And I very much like the way the previous caller, who was espousing open carry as his choice, put it about being, well-mannered, well-dressed, well-presented as you are doing it, because like it or not, as often happens with any kind of group seen as particularly non-mainstream or minority in any way, how you present yourself, you often get judged as the representative of the whole. So again, just don't be a jerk is a good way to live in life, particularly if you're deciding to go about it armed.
Yes, granted. Yes, and people that have appeared in places where I am, and and I see them with open carry. Yeah, the first thing I do, whether I'm with a family member or a friend, my attention is automatically drawn over there. Because I'm always
certainly
I'm always in a yellow, I'm always on a yellow alert.
I mean, it's better to be in that than I would say condition white all the time here, but I know what you mean.
Yes, yeah, and I tend to jump 1 degree higher when I see that, But anyway, or just be 1 degree higher. I never go to Thank God I've never gone to DEFCON 1.
Fair enough. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, knock on wood, I haven't had to do that in my life and hopefully never will. Because, I mean, yeah, attitude is certainly a major part of it. Because if you go around it saying, no, I'm going to take on the world because I've got tools and training, like, unless you are particularly equipped and abled, just doing it as I'm more equipped to handle what happens in my life, but to otherwise live it is about the only way I can really imagine to go about it.
Well, you know what I fear more than the people with guns, Andrew?
What's that?
The intoxicated driver.
Yeah, fair enough. I could certainly understand that. I mean, there are certainly choices that go into both, but willful ignorance, well, coming back to that point about, no, it's fine. There's just so much wrong with that mentality. Absolutely.
Understood. Anyway, you have a good evening, and Mike, goes back to you.
Sure thing. Appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there as well.
Likewise.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and have to take that next break, short-ish segment. But coming back, we got more calls in line. We got more comments that we'll get to, including Matt Olson, if I was discussing a kerfuffle earlier, of course. But anyway, getting back after this break, remember that number, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olgain with your KFOX 14 news update. A mangled mess on I-10 about 80 miles east of El Paso after winter weather results in a multi-vehicle pileup near Van Horn. Several 18-wheelers were involved in the crash that resulted in several injuries. It happened at 7 o'clock this morning, and at least 12 vehicles were involved. According to authorities, the road had several patches of ice. Severe winter weather is affecting much of Texas, causing hundreds of flight delays and cancellations. A person died after being involved in an ATV crash at Red Sands. According to authorities, it happened on Sunday night at about 7:45. Deputies were dispatched to the 15,000 block of Montana in reference to a two all-terrain vehicle crash. 2 drivers were taken to the hospital. One of them died at the hospital. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olgain.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
7-minute delays on the eastbound I-10 from Trans Mountain over to the 54 Patriot. An injury accident on northbound Mesa after Sunland Park at Camille Drive. Slow traffic on Mesa Street southbound from Desert Boulevard down to the downtown exits with 5-minute delays. Montana Avenue slow with 12-minute delays eastbound from McRae out to Yarborough. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery, closely monitoring the weather situation. We'll see increasing clouds in the overnight, about a 40% chance of showers as we go into your Wednesday. A winter weather advisory is in effect for East El Paso County, so if you're traveling east, be careful on those roadways. We'll see highs tomorrow in the lower 50s. For your Thursday, 10% chance of a morning shower with high around 58. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Right now during Staples Sit-a-thon, select chairs are more than 50% off, like the Leather Vortex Gaming Chair, now just $119.99. Offer ends 2/11 while supplies last. Staples, the working and learning and savings store.
On the Exorcist Files podcast, a leading exorcist and demonologist shares stories of disturbing and vicious cases of possession. For the last 2 decades, Father Carlos Martins has encountered evil in nearly every way imaginable.
What Hollywood portrayed in The Exorcist with levitations, vomiting, spitting at the priest, all of that has not been a movie for me. I have seen that firsthand.
Listen to The Exorcist Files on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Get your Cash Blitz scratch tickets from the Texas Lottery while you still can. It's the hot ticket you can enter to win a VIP iHeart trip and a shot to play the $10 million Cash Blitz Challenge. Enter today at texaslottery.com.
Welcome to the CPAP Games live from the Hayes bedroom. It's another eventful night, Bruce.
It sure is, Ron. Steve has been struggling with his CPAP.
His wife, Michelle, is trying to contain her rage.
Michelle throws an elbow.
She's leaving for the couch.
Steve should get Inspire.
Absolutely, Bruce. Inspire is a sleep apnea treatment that gives you comfortable, restful sleep with the click of a remote. There's no mask and no hose. Just sleep.
Learn more at inspiresleep.com.
Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle, and my company is Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 to provide custom blinds, shades, and shutters at affordable prices. Our blinds are easy to install and shipping is free. Don't hire an expensive professional. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and whatever, just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of stuff that we got going on, talking about comments coming in. Of course, that phone line open right now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. And we're taking those calls to the end of the hour as we do, more or less squeezing them in this segment here. But I'll tell you more about what we got coming up for you in future shows here after this next break. Look, at the meantime, let's check in some of these comments coming in here right now about the parts of laws and rules. James Radcliffe saying, asked Joe Pickett, former state rep, if I'm not mistaken, a long time ago, if the laws or rules passed in Texas or even at the local level passed constitutional muster. He said most likely no. I mean, local level, if you're trying to overcome, like, say, the Texas state constitution, I would say, particularly under Governor Greg Abbott, that answer has been resoundingly no, as there's not a whole lot of broaching he's been willing on that. But even at the state level, I mean, you start going back to, frankly, considerations of around the Civil War. I got to be honest with you, because you start getting into the idea of nullification of states' rights and those kind of things. And I mean, sure, there's some arguments to be made, and probably the best modern example would, weirdly enough, be probably around marijuana laws, though that's pretty much in state enforcement and this kind of tacit approval, more or less, coming from federal authorities or lack of enforcement there. But yeah, if you're trying to say, nope, we invalidate things such as anything with that has been passed federally, such as there is and I want to make it clear this is not legal advice. I'm just mentioning something that I find interesting and kind of weird, but would certainly not encourage you to do in any way, shape, or form. And no, this is not meant tongue in cheek, but like Texas has passed this idea about suppressors, firearm silencers, more commonly known, but legally known as suppressors, being legal to manufacture in Texas if they're kept within Texas and therefore not subject to the NFA. You will absolutely run afoul of federal laws if you're just trying to go along with that and say, no, but Texas says it's fine. Like, I'm saying don't do that, but that's an example that comes to mind there as well. Anyway, let's get back to the phone lines here right now. We do have Raul in the Northeast in line with us right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. That guy who called about guns, he was having a gun orgasm. The Second Amendment starts with a qualifying language of a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. Now, in my ideal America, if you're not a member of a well-regulated militia, then you should have to get a license to purchase weapons with a licensing process that includes a criminal background check and required training. And people cannot own weapons of war. Now, all these mass killers have not been members of a well-regulated militia. And the gun nuts think that the more guns that there are, that the safer people are, when in fact it's just the opposite. The less guns there are, the less violence there is, as evidenced by the developed countries of the West. We've had more mass attacks in this year than there are days in the year. We're the only country in the developed world with this level of gun violence and mass shooting, and a suffering, victimized country and its children where no one is safe anywhere, anytime, not safe at school, not safe at work, not safe while shopping, not safe while worshiping, not safe while partying, in a country that has more guns than there are people. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled on guns. And
Many times.
Right now, the Supreme Court has a disapproval rating of 58%. And 42% of the public says that the Supreme Court is too conservative. Now, the Supreme Court is even more unpopular than Trump and Congress, if you can believe that. Trump is the first president never to have achieved a 50% job approval rating. And Congress, under the Republicans, has become even more unpopular. So the most recent polling data for November 22 puts Congress's approval rating at 22%. I mean, this is a broken government. It is so sad for a country so rich in resources, financial, intellectual, scientific, organizational, that we have the government that we have and the results of the country that we have. Now, back in 1976 and 1978, conservatives on the Supreme Court legalized billionaires and corporations bribing politicians. In the cases Buckley versus Vallejo and First National Bank versus Belotti. And later on, they doubled down on and expanded the doctrine in 2010 with Citizens United. Right. And so the result is further entrenchment of America's plutocrats and their ability to purchase the best politicians money can buy, and especially Republicans who jumped at the chance to sell their souls to the corporations and the super rich. Now, back in 1980, Reagan floated into office with a tidal wave of cash from the oil industry. And his chief of staff was John Reagan, the former chairman and CEO of Merrill Lynch. And to this day, Republicans take so much money from the fossil fuel plutocrats that most Republicans deny the cause of climate change. And now we find that thanks to some great reporting by the New York Times, that the justices themselves are almost as corruptible as the Republican politicians. A donation of as little as $25,000 can get you FaceTime over dinner with the sitting justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. And the vehicle that the court uses to invite these donations is what is called the Supreme Court Historical Society. And it was started by Justice Warren Burger back in 1974. And it's an independent nonprofit located in the Opperman House, a building a block directly behind the Supreme Court itself, and which is across the way from the Capitol. So the Supreme Court Historical Society has become a social club of sorts, with opportunity to interact with the justices themselves, with the largest donors, known as trustees, if you get $5,000 a year. Or
getting a little bit heavy on the phone there. Be careful with the numbers here. Let me just say this real quick here is that, I mean, transparency is usually, I mean, I can't think of an example that I just can't think of an example where transparency would not be a good thing to have, hold, and put forth there. So anyone is up for scrutiny here, and as much as putting forth opinion polls on the Supreme Court ultimately doesn't, I mean, change what it is, if you want to say that, and therefore that's justification on us changing the makeup of it. I'm not going to follow that line. And the perennial issues with Congress coming up, absolutely, of course, that's been going on. I mean, it's been for at least since we've been doing this program, Congress has been underwater in approval ratings and has gotten arguably even worse on it there. But of course, you mentioning some of the Supreme Court cases going back for a while when it comes to campaign finance, would love to see that reformed, because I don't think money equaling speech exactly has been a net benefit for our country and our society. But you're factually wrong when it comes to the idea of weapons of war for the Second Amendment. And this isn't even the recent one, such as Heller versus DC that came up before. It's been brought up here otherwise, but U.S. versus Miller, the one that said that no, short-barreled shotguns and similar weapons can be regulated under the NFA and are not exempt from it because they are not weapons of war, actually, as a matter of fact, because that is what they put forth. So it's not even, this is not a recent decision. This is, from coming up on, to simply put it, 80 years ago in any case. So the idea of this being a new concept and being only related to, militias. So are you thinking that everyone that wants to own a gun should definitely join a militia? Is that what you're getting at here?
Yep. And do you think that you should be able to own a surface-to-surface missile?
Again, until you answer me where you can buy one and what the price is here, I can't give you definitive answer on that. I'm not sure it's within the budget, because, I mean, seriously, if you're saying that, there are restrictions and this was never allowed, people owned warships, like not even just cannons, but banks of cannons when this was originally coming out and originally part of the time frame we're talking about in the founding generation. So to say that, oh, no, sure, should reasonably there be regulations on stuff like that? Yeah, there is no right that is not subject to some kind of regulation on it, whether it be that your rights end at the bridge of my nose kind of concept with it as well. But if you're trying to say, oh, well, that's just so ridiculous, like, yeah, I definitely have thoughts about like tactical nukes. But if you're trying to say, oh, let's just take it to the most ridiculous extreme, I mean, sure, we can do that, but that's not exactly on the table as we're talking about it right now. The fact that we're talking about right now is a further removal of it. So yeah, appreciate the point and call. For what it's worth, always willing to have a discussion on things, but we'll have to take at least one more call here. So thanks for the point in the call. You have a good one there. Let's take at least one more call. We do have Frankie in Messi on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
Unbelievable. I guess the subject for today is guns.
In general.
There we go again with guns, right? Say, the United States of America has been the most violent nation ever since its inception, and even before. Plymouth, Jamestown, and I'm not even going to include all the Spanish going out killing everything that walks and bleeds. This is ridiculous. Now, these people running around with their guns concealed or on their hips is about the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen. I remember going to Walmart one day and some guy comes in and he's got a piece of iron on his hip. Everybody was staring at him like it was a jerk. Now, I remember back in the day, in Dodge City, Marshal Dillon got called out because Cletus shot Clyde. And so he goes out and he talks to Cletus and he says, why'd you shoot Clyde? Well, he stepped on my brand new cowboy boot and it made me mad. And Marshal Dillon said, you can't do that, Clyde. And if you do it again, I'm going to have to take you in and put you in the jail for a couple of hours so you learn your lesson. Now, what kind of a stupid insanity with these stupid guns? This is not a civilized society. This is some kind of anarchy. Well, that's not the word. Oh, my God, I can't even get it up. That's my comment, my opening comment.
Okay, I get what you're saying to an extent, but let me just say this, that someone committing a crime with a gun is still committing a crime, and they should be held accountable, responsible, arrested, charged, tried, guilty, whatever, as part of it here, because it doesn't matter the implement used, that is still the crime here. So if we're wanting to come to that, I guess that's one of the parts that really kind of irks me whenever we talk about this kind of top down, we'll just impose all these regulations and that'll deal with gun violence, is the actual efficacy on those points here. Like, yeah, the idea of lessening supply, I guess I can kind of get the idea of it, but if you're not actually like tackling, say, the gray and black markets when it comes to these things in terms of the supply, the availability of it, just saying, well, no, it's even more illegal than it was before, I just got to say that all you're doing is really affecting those that are willing to follow the law. I mean, I'm not trying to go with the whole cliche that criminals don't follow the law anyway, which is why they're called criminals, but the effectiveness of just saying, it's along the lines of saying, okay, no one is allowed to have bad things happen to them. That's the law. Like, sure, if you want to make that the law, how are you actually going to go about it? The devil is always in the details, and if things being proposed, particularly state of New Mexico right now, are just we don't want anything bad to happen, so we just got all these things, and sure, they'll have some impact, but you can't draw like the exact straight line to it or talk about how you're actually going to enforce it. That's where the problems start accruing and where the lack of effectiveness on these things. I mean, again, the examples have been made about how New York, California, and other places, Chicago comes to mind, have very high amounts of laws prohibiting these things, possession of them, and yet we still see, I mean, even recently, the problems and specific incidents have come along with that. So, I mean, sure, pass the laws that you want, set the society to the trajectory that you want, but if you're not actually talking about what it takes to achieve that, as opposed to just, well, we want it done, and I'm sure it'll happen, you're missing the rubber hitting the road moment.
Well, again, this is insanity. This gun culture stuff. And believe me, I mean, most of the all of the weapons that are out there, ancient, modern, whatever, are beautiful artistic masterpieces on that. I will not discount that. But I want to go, what Raul was spot on, what he was saying. Now, the Second Amendment, when they came out with the well-regulated militia and stuff, there's a couple of punctuation marks in there that were misplaced. And that's one of the problems in of itself. Now, we're going to continue on with this kind of nonsense where people are blasting away, right, wrong, or indifferent. Bad guys, right guys, I don't care. This is absolutely stupid. The whole thing, this is not the way a modern thinking, intelligent human is supposed to operate. And that's my comment.
All right, fair enough. Well, I mean, we'll keep an eye on what's going on in the state of New Mexico on this and the otherwise parts of the legislative session here, as well as some of the prosecutions that are going on, as we mentioned at the start of the show there. So thanks for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
All right, Andrew, take care.
You too as well. Have a good evening. And with that, we got to take that last break of this hour right now. Coming out of this, we'll tell you more about what we got coming up for you on the show and close it out. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A crash has closed all southbound lanes on Sunland Park at the I-10. All southbound lanes closed there due to that crash. Police and medical on the scene. I-10 westbound starting to slow down from Sunland Park up to Thorne with 5-minute delays. On the spur eastbound from the Gateway to the Loop, it's a 9-minute delay. And police responding to an accident Gateway West at Geronimo. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. I sell custom-made blinds, shades, and shutters that are easy to install at prices less than big box retailers. Blindster blinds are custom-made for your windows, and I guarantee they'll fit. Don't hire a pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
This is Ronnie Lowenfield, Casa Buick GMC. Listen to this.
Casa Buick GMC starts the year with December's record-breaking sales incentive. The 100% sales tax offer continues, and it's on right now on every new Buick SUV and every GMC truck and SUV. 2022 GMC Sierra Elevation, $50,135 after all tax savings and factory cash. 2023 Buick Encore GX, $26,035. 2022 Buick Envision, $33,690. GMC, we are professional grade. Only at Casa Buick GMC.
Yeah!
Sales tax Casa discount equal to 6.25% of MSRP value.
Hey, Texas! This time of year is all about coming together and enjoying time-honored holiday traditions or starting your own. This winter, make sure your fellow Texans, especially those with a serious mental health condition, know how to stay informed and protected from increased COVID-19 risks associated with serious mental illness. Getting vaccinated is pro-Texan protection against COVID-19. Visit www.vaccines.gov/search to find a vaccine provider near you.
Cashback is not available on gas in New Jersey and Wisconsin.
Hey, good morning. You're heading to the airport, right?
Yep, thanks for checking. I like the car. How long have you been a rideshare driver?
About 3 years now. I really enjoy it.
Isn't it hard to make money these days with the price of gas being so high?
Not for me. I use Upside, the free app that gives you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get real money back when you get gas with the Upside app?
Yep, I get real cash back every time I get gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
I'll make around $200 to $300.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the Upside app now.
Download the free Upside app now to earn real cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code CAR for an extra 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank account, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code CAR for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code CAR.
Rosetta Stone, where language is learned. RosettaStone.com.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk, basically out of time for this program here, so I want to tell you quickly what's coming up for some of the future ones, including tomorrow scheduled on the program to be talking about, let's revisit some of the recent decisions that have been made earlier this month. It'll be next month as of tomorrow, as we'll be in February, but early this year. Anyway, on the downtown arena, the plan for it, and the decision that they made. Some further response from former First Lady, former City Council persons, and some of the inputters into that study. So talk about what that could have been, and it might be what comes next. So stay tuned for that. More on the program. Also, more discussion later this week on some of the economic forecasts and potentials, how it might work out. And then, of course, we'll be right into Friday by that point. So a whole lot more to come here for on the show. But until then, until next time, as we are live every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., I want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. So until we're back, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when you're out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A crash has closed all southbound lanes on Sunland Park at the I-10. All southbound lanes closed there due to that crash. Police and medical on the scene. I-10 westbound starting to slow down from Sunland Park up to Thorne with 5-minute delays. On the spur eastbound from the Gateway to the Loop, it's a 9-minute delay. And police responding to an accident Gateway West at Geronimo. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Tara, quote, "My doctor wanted me to do saline rinses for my allergies, but I've never been able to successfully use a neti pot. Navage uses suction power, so it's foolproof. There are nights when I'll have particularly bothersome allergies. I'll bust it out, and the results are immediate. It's such a relief. It's become a lifesaver," unquote. She's one of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
It's important to know what's going on, especially around the world.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. Keeping you informed and up to date. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Vice President Harris will attend the funeral of Tyree Nichols in Memphis on Wednesday. Nichols was beaten to death by Memphis police officers earlier.